Well, folks, the latest polling shows that Carney liberals are gaining ground. But the real question is why? Are they winning voters over or just benefiting from conservative weakness?
And it shows some liberal gains and conservative softness on a party level, and the leadership perception gap remains a factor as well. So, there's debate over whether support is earned or default. Well, let's think about it for a minute. Default versus earned support. Are voters choosing liberals or rejecting conservatives? The leader versus the party brand. Is leadership perception driving the numbers? The gap between party support and leader appeal. A number of things to factor in there. Durability of the lead. Can support based on contrast hold during a campaign, and the risk of rapid shifts once voters engage fully? Well, it's really eye-opening in what the last polling, Abacus released a poll on May 5th, Eddie. And in that poll, the honeymoon is still on for Mark Carney. The Liberals have about a 10-point lead, solid lead, and they've maintained that lead over the Conservatives. And then when you get into the popularity of the leaders, who do you think is doing or can do the best job as a leader or as prime minister? Mark Carney is continues to outpace Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Now, a couple of weeks ago, you and I discussed whether Poilievre can win and whether he should stay or should he go.
Right.
So let's take it away from there. This lead that the Liberals have, this 10-point lead, and a lot of the polls are showing similar results, some of them a little bit less, some of them around the same or a little bit more. But the fact of the matter is there's a wide gap between the Liberals and the Conservatives. And when they asked Canadians about what kind of a job Mark Carney is doing, most people felt that Carney is doing a decent job and certainly better than what Trudeau did.
Yeah.
So again, you have that aspect of it. So is it the fact that the perception is Carney is doing a good job? But where does Poilievre come in? He does not have the confidence, it appears, of voters when they're asked. So again, are the Liberals really doing a good job? That's what I'd like to hear. Some comments and see some comments. Do you really feel that Mark Carney and the Liberals are doing a good job? Or are they out in front, maybe because they've hit a few home runs, but they're out in front because the opposition, the Conservatives, have not mounted a strong opposition?
Mm-hmm.
I have some thoughts on it, but I don't want to take over the show. I'll throw it to you first, Eddie. I'll let you throw the first snowball, and then I've got your back.
Yeah, no, Gary, we and I think it's great that you and I do this coverage on a regular basis in terms of the disparities between Carney and Pierre Poilievre, the Liberal Party and the Conservatives. We spoke about the NDP on one show quite extensively. And we said before Carney took the big chair that you and I had certain expectations of him through a honeymoon period, but equally, we gave, I think you and I, fair opportunity for Pierre Poilievre to be the opposition leader, a strong opposition leader that both you and I knew was required at Parliament in order for this government to function properly and in order to be the opposition to Carney's government, whether it was minority or majority government. And we've had quite a few shows where both you and I, quote unquote, said, would the real Pierre Poilievre please stand up? And sometimes he surprises us in terms of the strength that he did convey, but we didn't see a lot of that from a consistent perspective. We continuously saw Mr. Poilievre go back to the same old, same old. And you and I very, very eloquently told him on our show, Mr. Poilievre, Liberals 1.0 doesn't exist anymore. Justin Trudeau is no longer in charge. Why do you continuously bring that up? And I think when he makes his statements revolving around that, I think within Canada, swing voters like myself that will vote for the right candidate for the right position at the right time in Canada, he doesn't win me over with his attitude and his rhetoric and his sound bites and continuously going back to that. He alienates me. So if he's alienating me, and I'm pretty open, how is that coming across to the rest of the population of Canada? Who may vote conservative, but won't because he just is not rubbing them the right way, doesn't show the necessary leadership our country expects out of somebody who would like to become the Prime Minister of Canada. How is he going to handle himself in the international spotlight? And how is he going to handle himself as an economist or try to drive an economy in Canada to be as productive as we possibly can? And just to circle around and finish up here, I think you and I have given him ample opportunity to prove himself. Look, the guy's been sitting in there for years. It's not like Mr. Prime Minister Carney. He's there in his first year and some odd months as Prime Minister of Canada, who never was a politician prior to that. Yeah, he was governor of the Bank of England and Bank of Canada, which has a considerable amount of politics, but not in the public sphere of running a country. So Mr. Poilievre has got years of experience sitting in Parliament. Yet, I don't understand how he's not learned how to conduct himself as a potential leader of a country. He's lost me, and with every week that I watch him, he loses me even more. More so, he's you're asking whether the Liberals are gaining just by default, or are they actually gaining because something that's not happening in the Conservative Party or their leader Pierre Poilievre. I think it's the latter. Even hardcore conservatives are scratching their heads and saying, "Boy, I don't know about this guy." So I think it's the latter. I don't think it's a default thing, Gary. I think the Liberals are gaining potential voters, and from what the polls are saying, at the expense of the Conservative government. As the Conservative Party at their expense, I'm disappointed. I really thought more of Mr. Poilievre, to tell you the truth. I really thought he's turned a corner and he realized what was important to Canada and the Canadians, and he just keeps on going back to the same old, same old.
Well, here I've brought up the poll, the webpage that the poll is on. And right now, 57% of Canadians approve of the job the Carney government is doing. That's up 3 points from April. And only 28% disapprove. That's down 1 point. So let's see what else is here. There's some really interesting numbers. Okay, and this, just bear with me. Okay, now, this question is, do you have a positive or negative impression of the leader, Carney? 54% positive, 17% neutral, 28% negative, and 2% don't know. So the net impression is a plus 26 for Carney. Polyev, 35% positive, 15 or 16% neutral, 45% negative, 3% don't know. So his net impression is a -10. In Lewis, 18% positive, 32% neutral, 26% negative, 24% don't know, net impression -8. So Carney leads with a net impression of 26. Polyev sits, as we said, at -10, Lewis at -8, but 24% say they don't know enough to say whether one is better than the other. So let's go to the next slide there. Okay. Views of the Carney government in comparison to the Trudeau government. 55% of Canadians see the Carney government as a genuine break from the Trudeau years, while 45% see it as a continuation. Atlantic Canada, 69%, and older Canadians, 64%, are most likely to see it as a break.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's go to this. Let's bring it up. There we go. Federal vote intention. If an election was held today, which national political party would you vote for? The undecided was removed. 46% say they would vote Liberal. That's up 1 point from April 22nd. 36% say Conservative, no change. 8% NDP, no change. The Bloc Québécois, 6%, they're down a point. And then Green and the People's Party and others come in, 3, 1, and 0. So Liberals bumped up 1 point between April 22nd and May 5th or 6th, whatever the date was on that poll, early May. No change for the Conservatives, which is interesting. They didn't lose, which is a good thing, but they didn't gain. And let's see. Well, we could break it down by region. Okay. And region. Can I get that? Yep, I can. Okay. So when you look at it, the only 2 provinces, or 3 actually, in Canada where the Liberals trail the Conservatives, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba.
Mm-hmm.
The rest are pretty solid. Ontario, 50% would vote Liberal, 37% Conservative. And they have a Conservative government, provincial government. Quebec, 48%. Yeah. So, the PQ has to be watching this because the polling in Quebec, the Liberals with their new leader have started to really close in on the PQ, and the PQ had quite a lead.
Yes, they
up
did.
Up until the Liberals elected a new leader. In Atlantic Canada, 62% would go with the Liberals. So again, I guess when you look at it from that perspective, Eddie, I would suggest that it's a combination of things. Canadians seem to be relatively satisfied with the direction of Carney and his government, but there's no growth in support for the Conservatives. So that tells me that even though there is support for Carney and the Liberals and what they're doing in government, it also means that they have really no opposition.
Mm-hmm.
So Are they winning by default? I would have to say that to a degree, because there have been some stumbles in the last little while, but they're getting a free ride.
So you're saying that they're getting a free ride because there has been little progress, in your opinion, from what the Conservative Party is doing, or is it directly related to potential shortcomings of Pierre Poilievre as your leader, or both?
Well, let me put it this way. The leader of the party sets the tone and the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Need I say more?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be accused of just coming on and throwing snowballs at the leader of the party. So let's look at it from a factual standpoint. Because the Conservatives still talk about how they increased their share of the popular vote last April in the federal election. And okay, that's fine. You can live on that, but you lost the election. You didn't form government. The Liberals won a minority government. You didn't form government. And your leader at the time lost his seat.
Yeah.
Again, it keeps coming back around to a couple of things here. And I don't want to be accused of harping on it, but those are the hard, cold facts. The Carney government and the approach Carney is taking, I would suggest to you, is really, and had the Conservatives won a minority or a majority government last April, and we saw something beyond the slogans as far as government policy is concerned, I think that the Conservatives would have had the same sort of support, because it would be such a breath of fresh air from what we put up with during the during the Trudeau years.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it comes back around. Carney doesn't have to do another thing right now. He could coast through into the summer, and there will be some by-elections coming up, but he could coast, I would suggest. And not a whole lot would change. You might see a bit of slippage in the support for the Liberals, but I don't think you would see a huge line, downward. And it comes back around to they're winning by default.
Right. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. In terms of your comment about all Carney has to do is coast, he doesn't strike me as a coaster. I don't think his character is everything's okay. I'm not going to ruffle anybody's feathers, which gives me a sense of confidence that he knows there's a lot of work ahead of him and for the country to clean up the mess that he inherited from the last 15 years of incompetent government. So, you know what? He knows he's got a lot of work. He's demonstrating that it's continuously working. Yep, he spends a lot of time on the airplanes meeting world leaders and meeting our leaders of our provinces to move this country forward. So, you know what? Thank God he's not somebody who's just going to look at the polls and say, "Hey, I think I'm going to go golfing for the rest of the summer, and the country will run itself." Not his character, and I'm really pleased to say that I have the confidence he's not going to slack off at all. At all. He deserves a good vacation, but he's not going to slack off. I don't think so.
Okay. Our takeaway?
Our takeaway. Well, if support is built on default, Gary, it can disappear just as quickly when voters are forced to choose.